Check, check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Check, check. All right.
Awesome. So thanks, guys. Kind of the purpose of the event today was redefining IT, right? So in that light, HPE is kind of talk about kind of some of the different ways that we're doing that as a company. So from corporate strategy, how we're progressing products, and some of the different tools that we can do that. And myself, Ryan, and Pamela will be talking about some of those different facets today. So as we know, data is kind of the lifeblood of any company today, right? So we've spent a lot of time talking about it this morning from a security perspective, what you're guarding, what that data actually means to your company as opposed to just bits and bytes. And the ways that we're going after it really are about making it easy to consume and manage the data, easy to protect it, and some of the AI and things around it. So what's holding customers back, and I think everybody is kind of realizing these different things, but all the different silos that we're putting things into, the different areas of expertise. So having to have somebody that runs every platform versus having individuals that own an architecture. Having to fight the constant fires of keeping the infrastructure up and running and what's broken today versus actually spending your time as an IT person focusing on how can I help my business out, right? So that's where we've spent a lot of focus. Different things that we're working on, so making you more agile, being able to spend less of your time being the mechanic fixing things and more of it actually working on how can we use our IT to make the business more profitable, to make us more efficient, those sorts of things. So, a couple marketing statistics. This one came from ESG, but just kind of talking about the different things that are out there. So digital transformation is kind of the buzzword as far as how we're taking IT to the next level. And most companies are viewing just the complexity of everything. You've got all of these security requirements, all of the different hardware, making sure you've got a DR plan, you're in multiple sites. There's so much complexity that you have to manage. It just becomes a big burden. So these are all things that we've been working on to try and make things easier. So a couple of products that I'll actually take and walk through some demo on here in a minute. But we're working on a unified platform to do management from the cloud. So whether that's storage or compute or networking, you name it. Aruba Central's been around for a while. I know there's a lot of Aruba customers that are here. Think about taking that or a Meraki-like experience for your data center. So what if you could run all of your assets from one pane of glass? So if you have, say, 30 different servers across 10 different sites, how much time do you spend touching every single server to do your updates or to do your configuration? We can do all of that from a common cloud, taking the burden off of you. Likewise, on the storage side, a lot of customers are in heavy growth mode. So as Ryan kind of talked about the GreenLake play, that's the cloud that comes to you, I think is the banner that we've got hanging behind the desk today. But really what it's about is being able to enable consumption without having to take all of that gear off-site. So these platforms combine to enable you to buy what you need, pay for it when you need it, and manage it in the most efficient way that you can. So DSCC, or Data Services Cloud Council, is the storage focus side of things, and we'll take a look at it here in a bit. But what it is, basically, it's a portal that allows you to manage your storage platform. And whether that's one array or arrays spread across a number of different sites, it gives you one common place to go to be able to configure, consume, provision, all of that stuff. And when it comes to paying for things, the as-a-service model is quite interesting. So traditionally, you buy something, you run it until it's full, and then you add on another one and another one. In a consumption model, you only pay for what you need. And there is a cost premium for doing that, right? If you go to the cloud, it's not the same. But where you realize those savings comes in essentially what your actual consumption is over time. So we can bring in an array. You only pay for the small amount that you need to begin with. And as you grow, it tapers up, right? And we've got these stepping stones too, because we still have to bring in more hardware when we reach those points. But your savings come in, when we're in between those two lines. So if you're flat, if you're running at a pace where you've had the same amount of data forever and you don't see that changing, those numbers are going to be pretty flat. You're probably not going to see a big savings. But when you're in growth mode, and most of our customers are, data tends to be 20, 25% a year right now in growth. If it's not predictable, there's some big curves that can be adjusted in there. So for a storage perspective, we have a new product called Block as a Service, which is basically the consumption model for storage. And we offer it in 3 different flavors. So mission critical, which is our 100% uptime guaranteed, business critical, which is our 6 nines, and then general purpose. So all of these are built on top of the Electra or Nimble platforms. Basically, it's a really simple way to go and get things. Basically, you pick which SLA you need, how much capacity you want to start with, and you submit an order. We ship it out, we put it on site, we set it up, and you can go into the portal and consume it. You have the same tools that you would normally have, plus the dashboards over the top. And then as you grow, we scale things up, and you get all of the benefits that you would have from an infrastructure insight, from InfoSight, and the GreenLake side of things from a management perspective. So some of the things that these things do between the portals and the consumption side, it makes things way more efficient. So not only from a cost perspective, but from a staff time. And that's probably the most valuable resource we have as IT, is how much time we can actually spend working on something. Kind of a look on this slide speaks a little bit to the overall strategy. So today we started off with Block as a Service, so being able to consume your storage on-prem. And we're also moving to some other things like backup as a service, file, compute. All of these things are starting to move that direction. So we're getting to the point where the whole portfolio will be something that you can consume as a service if you choose to do that. And these all just become building blocks to a common platform. So I'm going to give you kind of a quick glance at some of the portals and what some of these tools look like. Yeah, let me see if I did that, but I got to close this Prezo out, I think.
forward and all the customers at HPE services in the pipeline out there. Right now, in this area specifically for North Central, it's right around 15% of customers are interested in this model. Granted, a lot of those, that number is driven by very, very large opportunities, kind of bringing that aggregate up, but just something to kind of keep in mind there. Really interesting opportunity for y'all, and you don't have to be a major enterprise player to take advantage of it. We can do it as simply as maybe 4 or 5 servers or 1 or 2 storage enclosures. So kind of something to maybe size it up in your mind as to what would be an acceptable play for HPE GreenLake solution. Just put it back to the presentation. We'll just continue on.
So if you want to see a demo,
right there is fine. Okay, well, again, apologize for that, folks, but my name is Ryan Swango, and I'm the Partner Business Manager, so responsible for the relationship between Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and High Point Networks. I'm so pleased to have them as one of the partners that I represent internally within Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Their vision is spot on. I really like the fact that they had a pretty strong security presence at this event because it's just become paramount to how we all operate our businesses today. So I have a few slides that I'd like to cover off on, and you're going to start to see some commonalities here. So when we were listening to John Cilio, for example, he referenced not only the SolarWinds attack, but also the Colonial Pipeline attack. So it's one of those interesting things where we're all using these examples out there. And to be honest, they're all scare tactics. I hope you're sufficiently scared from John earlier today. Does anyone want to let me borrow their phone for 5 minutes? I just got to go outside and make a quick call. I think we we all learned the answer is no. Personally, I want to figure out how he did the phone thing with that limited information, but maybe that's for another day. But that being said, cybersecurity has been a focus for HPE. So kind of when I kicked off the session, I talked about when public cloud came and disrupted the market so significantly, we all had to make a choice as to where we were going to focus. I believe HPE made the right choice and focused internally on making our products hardened and stronger. And I intend to display that for you right here. But again, scare tactics, I think everyone understands that the threat out there is real and it's not going anywhere. It's not going away anytime soon. One figure that didn't come up today that I thought is interesting to note is they did speak quite a bit around, well, what happens if you pay a ransom? And then 50% of the time you get the data back, 50% of the time you don't. And then they started talking about, well, if you gave the data back as a bad actor, then guess what? You get a reputation as a good bad actor or something along those lines. But one thing that struck in my mind is kind of a obvious follow-up is how often are companies that have had security breaches and have been held hostage by ransomware, how often are they paying? So industry analysts out there, they try to track this number. Very, very hard to ascertain is the fact that you as a company, you don't want this to be front page news, but the industry analysts, I've seen estimates anywhere between 60 to 80% of the time. And me, that scares me. Because if we're paying out 60 to 80% of the time, the behavior is not only going to continue, it's going to increase. It's going to increase at crazy rapid rates. Then comes in COVID, right? COVID introduced a whole new layer of threat vectors from mobile compute to supply chain issues. So we're working a lot longer on aging technology. How often is it being updated? Or firmware and drivers and everything being kept to the high standards that are required. Surprisingly, surprisingly, I would say people started to take their devices from anywhere from 3 to 4 years to maybe 5 or 7 as a result of that pandemic. So something to kind of keep in mind if you're running on anything out there that's aging, you want to ensure that you're at least having a conversation to try to migrate off some of those aging technologies from a security standpoint. But again, it's almost like they had access to my deck before I even presented. You saw a castle today, right? Castle's a great analogy for everything that we as HPE have determined is important in the security world. Now, for a long, long time, security in IT was set up a firewall at the perimeter, which is the moat, and anything within that firewall is trusted. Anything outside of that firewall, not trusted. So managing data flow and data traffic into your core data center. So in that example, we as HPE kind of have determined or call this like an outside-in principle. It worked for a while. So firewall, possibly security at the software layer, maybe a VPN to tunnel up in under there securely. But even those have vulnerabilities too. So what we as HPE have done, and again, hardening our products, and everything that I'm talking to you about today, with HPE comes free of charge except one thing, and I'll call that out specifically. So it's important to know that when you're purchasing HPE products, you're buying the best. We go above and beyond the call when it comes to securing our products. We do things that other manufacturers refuse to do based on cost. And we take everything that's commonly available from a component level, like think Intel and AMD and what they do to secure from a hardware standpoint, and we as HPE actually build in our own silicone. But if you look at some of these threat vectors internally, disgruntled employees, data breaches, this is all that social engineering that John had mentioned earlier today. So it even comes down to, well, one of your employees found a USB drive in the parking lot. They plug it into their system to try to find out who it belongs to and do the right thing and get it back to them. Big red flag, but again, it's an existing threat out there. So we as HPE, we've actually formulated a new protocol when it comes to security. We call it inside out. So everything at the core of the data center is secure. I'm going to show you how we do that, but it's an entirely different mentality. We're trying to block anything attacking to blocking outwards, starting at the core of the data center with your servers and storage devices. So kind of a neat dynamic, and I'll break this out in a separate slide that'll show what that means. We'll go vertically, and we can walk through each one of them individually. But the good news about what we as HPE do is because the core is so secure, it actually permeates out, and it does reach the edge when you're talking about HPE products, which is something that would sit outside of the core data center. Kind of a neat dynamic. So in talking through what we as HPE do around security, we call it a 360-degree security approach. We also have a division of individuals. We call it the SWAT team. They work on a project that's called Project Aurora. I'll have a little bit of content on that as well. But what we do doesn't just start at manufacturing. It doesn't just start at what we implement in the silicone of our servers. It's an entire holistic lifecycle view. So starting with our supply chain, secure supply chain, going all the way through some of the unique components in silicone that we put in our servers that no one else does. The buzzword there, that if you want to learn more about that, is called the Silicone root of trust. It's a digital fingerprint that's in about 20 components of the server. If ever that digital fingerprint doesn't match, it means firmware or drivers were tampered with. At that point, the server is rendered no longer operable. The good news, we as HPE also have secure restore technologies, and we're always checking the firmware, and we do it about every 15 minutes, I think, is the lowest time that we offer. Most customers are out there doing it about every hour. So from a recovery standpoint, we're pretty neat and we're pretty dynamic in the fact that, well, we can afford to lose maybe 15 minutes out of our data storage, but can we afford to lose 3 hours, 4 hours, 3 days, whatever it takes? So we're kind of unique there as well. So early threat detection with automated recovery, that's what I just covered. All the way through asset retirement, we make everything as secure as possible. So this is if we took that cube view that I showed you and flipped it. So moving upstream, starting at secure supply chain and silicone root of trust, basically the inherent benefits that you receive in our products, all the way up through OS, all the way up through applications, you're secure on HP devices. And there's one other thing out there, and trusted supply chain is kind of it's a concept that I think everyone out there says. We as HPE, we only use the most trusted suppliers out there, and we limit our pool of suppliers when we're working with components and putting together our product sets. So with the secure supply chain, a lot of people ask, well, does that matter? Everything's secure. There's one story out there I'd like to draw attention to. You may have seen it. You may not have, but it was covered up very, very well. I'd encourage you to Google, and I think probably the best search term for you to look is the big hack. So ultimately what it was, the server manufacturer was Supermicro, even though they were unaware that it was happening. But there were some bad actors out there that put a chip on Supermicro boards that was about the size of a grain of rice. And that impacted many, many, many top name companies in the US, Apple and Amazon included. So when people say, well, okay, secure supply chain, what does that mean? Well, guess what? If you're insecure and you have some bad actors like this take advantage, it has large repercussions all the way across the globe. So Supermicro got kind of butchered by that one a little bit. But it's kind of funny because of those large-scale names that it affected, the media was a little bit quiet on it. I think you could probably still find articles out there on maybe Bloomberg or Forbes regarding that. But that's what helped stimulate, and that's what helped laid a lot of credibility over to HPE. And I'll take that a step further because HPE, we are the only manufacturer that offers finished goods server products made in the USA. And this is relevant because it's just a few states over is our factory that we do this. It's in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, a little over an hour from where I live. Kind of funny anecdote there is I tried to step foot in that facility with my HPE credentials, didn't even get past the front door. So I kind of wanted to test out how secure is. Yeah, I got laughed out of the building. Let's just put it that way. So that being said, all of this, I'll leave you with one last point. All of this is fine and dandy. Ryan Swango's up here. I'm an HPE associate. I'm preaching that our products are the best out there. I'm not the only one out there saying this. So during the presentations today, you heard quite a bit about cyber insurance and how insurance policies are on the rise. We as HPE took part in what do you want to call it, like an RFP for the most secure products. And we as HPE submitted in some Aruba product sets, and we also submitted in some HPE servers. Due to all these enhancements that I've talked about, HPE, we won 2 out of 16 awards. One was an Aruba access point, and then one was the HPE ProLiant Gen 10 server, so the industry standard server. The industry standard naming convention is actually made after our server technology. But that being said, this was done by Marsh. Marsh is an aggregator of all of those risk insurers that exist out there. And Marsh put out this RFP, this proposal. They call it the Cyber Catalyst designation. So they put it through a rigorous security protocol testing. And of all the products out there, HPE had the only server that was granted the Cyber Catalyst designation. So what does that mean? Well, it's industry affirmation that we as HPE were doing the right thing. But more importantly, any of our customers that are utilizing those products and they're insured by Marsh, again, aggregator of that cyber insurance, they receive a reduction in the premiums that they have to pay for said cyber insurance. So, wanted to kind of leave you there. I really love the fact that there was so much focus today on security. Our security message nearly identically matches everything that you heard on stage today. So a little bit of this is redundant, but my job was to try to explain and just twist it a little bit from, overarching security towards hardware specifically. So if you do have any further questions, love to talk to you. You can catch us at the back of the room, or we can talk at the booth outside. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pamela Moore to talk about one more of our initiatives.
All right, thanks, Ryan. So I'm Pamela Moore. I've worked in the solutions architecture space with storage For quite a few years. I was an HPE and multi-vendor customer for a number of years before becoming a solutions architect at a reseller and doing everything from design and implementation, rack and stack, break fix, mission critical, to also training my customers. And after that, went over to the HPE storage team, and I've been with HPE now for 8 years, started in New York City, but then moved back to, I'm not a New Yorker, moved back to St. Paul, and I'm still with HPE 4 years out east and 4 years here in the Midwest. So I have a history with High Point Networks, many familiar faces in the room, not only the partner, but the customers as well. I have worked in the data center with Jess and Dennis on their accounts. Over the years, I was a pre-High Point Networks employee as well. So it's just great to be here and participate in this event. So I just want to touch off on some of the messages here about, what we're doing to help our customers run more efficiently. So that takes place in our sustainability and innovation department. Aaron and Ryan already touched on some of our products. Aaron mentioned the DSCC InfoSite that helps you run more efficiently. Ryan is talking about our security and Silicone root of trust and how that also helps our customers run more efficiently and cut down on resources. So the big problem, the big question to solve in recent years that's been creeping up slowly is sustainability, and how do we achieve that? And net zero. It's like, what is net zero? First of all, sustainability has become more of a widespread goal within corporations for a number of reasons. Shareholder value is very key, and bottom line, it's running more efficiently is very cost effective. So just a quick show of hands to help explain net zero. I mean, maybe you guys understand and are already moving towards a net zero goal within your company, but how many of you at home have replaced incandescent, older bulbs with LEDs? Just show of hands, yeah, exactly. How many have had the older television sets, like the huge boxes, and switched over to an LED flat screen? Yeah, absolutely. So congratulations, you've already taken steps in becoming a net zero household. So in a nutshell, I also like to think of net zero being kind of like going camping. How many of you guys like to get outdoors or camp? I mean, we're in the Midwest. We love this. We love it here. And one of the reasons I moved back to Minnesota. So, with camping, growing up in a family where my father was a scout leader, one of my older brothers was an Eagle Scout, and I had, camped throughout my entire life and still do. And I always heard about, pack it in, pack it out, leave no trace, respect your space. So becoming a net zero company is a goal to only consume as much energy that is produced. So to strike that sustainable balance between availability and demand. So you're almost becoming, flat zero in how much emissions your corporation is emitting and creating during its energy consumption. So with HPE's ambitious goal to get to net zero, we have a couple key dates. We plan to be 70%, I'll touch on that in a second, by 2030, and 90% by 2040. So what this means is, it's a little bit of an eye chart, but it helps you to get an idea of just, this isn't something new, a goal that we just set a few years ago. Innovation and sustainability, it's in our heritage. If you look back at the left-hand side of the screen, 2001, HPE was the first blade architecture development. And as many of you know, there's been, you had numerous footprint rack tile or spaces, floor tiles taking up rack space with standard rack mount servers. The blades really came through and innovated, saving real estate and energy consumption with condensing that footprint into, like the C3000 and 7000 chassis back in the day. One of our other key milestones for innovation and being energy compliant is the first Energy Star certified servers and thermal logic. There was a time when the engineers at HPE in the ProLiant line R&D department went in to work with aeronautics departments and used airplane aeronautics technology to hone in the fan speeds for the ProLiants. So if you bought a new ProLiant, you'd have to do a couple firmware updates if it didn't ship from the factory that way, and you could actually hear the change in the rate of speed of the airflow, depending on the consumption, the energy, and the IOPS going through that server. So that was very innovative for its time, and we continue to, move forward, in that process of innovating and bringing the sustainable innovations to our customers. And here are a couple of the dates that I mentioned. 2030 becomes 70%, and then net zero by 2040. And this isn't only HPE. If you Google net zero or ESG targets, ESG is economic, social, and governance practices. Walmart, Target, Mercury, inboard, outboard, Merck Motors, Polaris, they're all working towards, I would say, probably 80% of the corporations out there, large or small, mid to large enterprise, are working towards a net zero goal because it means money in our pockets as a consumer, money in the stock price, in the shareholders' pockets, money in the corporation, the pockets of the corporation. So right now, about 31% of our environmental impact is in our supply chain that we're looking at reducing. And 31% of our carbon emissions footprint is, logistics and the manufacturers that we work with. 3% is within the energy spent in our factories, and then 66% is in the product and solutions, the energy they consume. That is the number we are trying to bring down, which in turn brings money back to our customers. If HPE is running efficiently, our customers are running efficiently. So just some of the key points that we want to hit on is equipment efficiency, once again, condensing rack space, such as in the blades, Superdome Flex 280, powerful machine, larger chassis, but you can condense a number of ProLiant 380s into that footprint, similar to the Apollo offering. Energy efficiency, operating with the best amount of energy necessary, so bringing in those technologies such as the thermal logic to run at a lower energy consumption base. And then the great thing about it is resource efficiency. So, requiring a lower amount of effort that person in the data center, that your data center admin has to, wring their hands about, worry about, do I have a hot server? Is this aisle, consuming more cooling? Is it hot here? Am I going to get any alarms within my data center? Those technologies that HPE is working on to bring, the cooling, the smart filtering within our chassis will help save some of that expended time so you're not constantly looking at your alarm tickets. And then software efficiency, using AI and predictive analytics such as InfoSight, to predict some of these things, who's running hot, what are some of the dangers out there in our failures, preempting the failures as well. So in order to holistically look at this, the project sustainability dashboard is a proof of concept that HPE is working on with the Office of the CTO and the Innovation Group. And what it means is it'll bring a holistic view to our customers and our HPE data center users, where they log into a dashboard and they'll see a pin for each one of their locations, and it'll be red, yellow, or green depending on its status. And how is it running? Is it running efficient? What are the emissions that it's expending? If there's one site, it'll show the same, the same thing. You can drill down into your average CPU usage, energy consumption, total cost, kilowatt hours, and look into those KPIs and what's trending. What is the average CPU usage? Now, I understand that, if you've run a data center in the past or been a storage or compute or network lead or on any of those teams, you do have interfaces such as this to see some of those performance metrics, and you do have the capability to see, energy usage. But the key thing is, how do you look at that holistically rather than going into, we want to economize on the resource of the IT staff so they can work on more exciting and challenging projects versus logging into multiple pages, looking at consumption and cost. It'll be a holistic view. Or I don't know if anyone has had the problem where, you're running high on, hot with an energy issue, heating and cooling, and you actually have to work with the facilities management team. I mean, I got really good at, even though I, was a storage IT lead, I got very good at working on, Liebert chillers and coolers, calling my facilities management teams, figuring out, how can we better organize this data center to bring down our energy costs. But with a dashboard like this, you'll be able to, zero in on the site or multiple sites and know, what is your average? What are the different chassis running at? There are KPIs that you can also average out and then send reports to the CEO so they can, at the executive level, at the CTO level, look at these reports and forward those on to, how is our corporation bringing value to, our customers by saving money, putting the value in our products instead. And here we have a view of, the actual chassis themselves. You can do individual nodes. There's, the red is a warning sign. This may be an older model chassis. In this example, it's like a Gen 9, but that's not always the case. I mean, it could even be a newer model that's not running efficiently that you can zero in on. Because sometimes the assumption is older technology will not be as efficient, but, if you swap that out, sometimes, you have to decrease what you have existing on the floor with upgrading to something a little bit newer or a more dense footprint to consolidate real estate as well as, cost savings. So, well, I think, Cole, you had asked Ryan about GreenLake, and this is the beauty, one of the beauty factors of GreenLake, where you can stay ahead of the curve with swapping out your technology, upgrading where some of those, problematic areas are, not only maybe with the technology performance itself, but with the sustainability performance. So I just wanted to mention it's a phased approach. Right now, we're in the stage, there isn't a due date. We're being very cautious. HPE is being a little more cautious about saying when it will be released. We're in phase 1. We're gathering data. It's an API-based agent. Well, I'm not even going to say agent because that's always a bad word. It's agentless. The partners and customers we did work with just to get a few focus group feedback sessions, immediately it was like, no, it has to be agentless, and I know everybody here understands why that would be a problem. So it's API-based. Right now, it's based on HPE Data Center product, bringing in data points from ILO with Amplifier Pack, InfoSite, pulling in all of those metrics. Phase 3 will be pulling in third-party vendor, multi-vendor data center environment products, as well as bringing in that autonomic predictive analytics characteristics to the product, similar to how we work with InfoSite. If this is running, too hot or inefficiently, how can we throttle it back, et cetera, et cetera. So that is where we are today, and if you have any questions, please let me know. And thanks for your time.